Let's move away from lies and fears.
Perhaps it's time to leave.
Free from how you look or what they say. Like a lion runs wild through the wilderness. Free from showing off a living fate. Like the eagles flying high, dancing with the air. There's breath in your lungs to breathe. Say, God, take this mask away. You see, he won't let you stay. Living in hollow days.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of ShatterCast. Today is the first of two segments we're going to be doing on Endgame. Warning, spoilers.
Tons of spoilers.
Tons of spoilers.
All the spoilers.
I am a spoiler.
Badass.
So many
Do
spoilers.
you know why I'm a spoiler?
I'm not a spoiler.
If you've seen the movie, you know why I'm a spoiler. If you haven't seen the movie, stop this now. Just don't. It's probably in the title of this segment that there's going to be spoilers.
Yeah.
Probably with exclamation points. So why would you click
Maybe
on this
2 or 3 exclamation
if you haven't seen the movie?
Kind of
Unless
your
you
fault.
want spoilers.
So many spoilers, you'll have to check your milk after watching this.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
Wow. I almost want to start over and pretend she didn't say that, but I'm not going to. Here we go. All right. So
Oh my goodness, the masks are coming off.
I am here.
Thor, is that you?
I am cosplaying as melted ice cream Thor for like every con this year. Okay, so I'm here with my lovely wife Hannah, Joel, and
Hello.
Derek. They're lovely too, but they are not my wife. So
That's a true statement.
technically the truth.
Technically the truth.
Technically.
Which is the best kind of accurate. So let's just talk about some things that we loved about it. Okay, we got plenty of time. We're doing a whole nother segment. So let's start with Joel. What would you say is your favorite scene or top 3?
Ooh,
Let's
geez.
go wild, Joel.
Oh man,
Go wild.
I think that when like we first saw Thor, there's like this hype up. It's like he has changed, and then we see him, and we go, yes,
Yeah, he's
changed.
changed.
He's changed a little bit. And what's so funny is like, you know,
Yeah.
it was not something that I thought. And then also
Yep.
when Thanos got his head cut off.
Right.
That was a little bit of a twist that
What
I
did you
didn't see
do?
coming.
I
I
went
said,
for the head.
where'd his head go? You guys, you're asking me what did I do? And then
Did you actually say that in the theater? Oh, where does his head go?
I did not say that. That was a very rough. That was not the exact quote.
And that was all in like the first 20 minutes, mind you.
was.
So I was like, where are they going with the rest
was.
of We got like 2.5 hours, people. What are we doing?
Oh,
I was
man,
not
but
expecting
then-
Thanos to have destroyed the stones.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And then I think my favorite scene though that really got like me the most was when Captain's there with a shield up and he just looks out at Thanos and just all the squad of the bad like guys and he's just like
right?
and I thought that he was just kind of charging lone like wolf style. But what I thought was very nice was that Thanos
On your left.
decided to wait until all his friends showed up to fight him.
That was nice.
That
of
was
Thanos.
very polite of Thanos.
To be fair, they've been fighting a lot already.
I know.
Thanos was probably tired.
He was a little tired.
Yeah, I mean, Captain Shield was actually like half.
When
in
I
half.
when I saw that break, I was like, yeah.
You were like, what?
I was like, that shield just went yeet. That's what I'm trying to be hip.
Stop.
Wow, wow.
That- I think that's my
I
thoughts.
almost want to start over all over again.
I feel traumatized.
That was more painful.
Please.
That was more painful than watching Iron Man die.
Oh.
And then he was like yeet as well. And then he died, and now his wife is alone.
You're never coming
Sorry,
back.
guys.
That's sad.
He's
This
never-
is a
he's never
sad
coming
cast.
back.
This is a
He's never-
sad cast. All right. Anyway, so that was my favorite moment.
I should have done this before we started, but everyone at this table, we all liked the movie, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it safe to say we all loved the movie?
I know I did.
Yeah. I did.
I thought it was good. I thought it was good. It was a good movie.
I thought it was really good. I think it was really good. Not perfect, really good.
I loved it because it was perfect.
Infinity
me.
War, in my opinion, was a little bit.
I'm kind of at the point where like I don't even want to watch not movies. Watch.
Wow. You didn't like it that much?
I don't want to
Like,
watch.
I'm done with
It was
movies.
so good. I'm just done with cinema.
I meant to say I don't
done.
want to watch movie critics that are like, this is what I would have changed because I don't want them to like ruin it for me. The
that makes
joy
sense.
that I got from that experience.
That's what. Hey, that's good.
Yeah.
Good points.
Fair enough. Derek, favorite Favorite scene and or scenes?
There's so many, and a bunch of us are going to bring up a lot of them. I like the point that they took time for great character moments, like when they came back from the first battle with Thanos and Endgame, and Rocket says something.
Ratchet?
Ratchet.
What? Was that a Ratchet and Clank reference?
Maybe, I don't know.
Or was he just calling him a tool because he's useful? I don't know.
I don't know.
I hope it was a Ratchet and Clank.
Rocket says something, and then Tony looks at him and he said, honestly, for a second there, I thought you were a Build-A-Bear. And like, I was cracking up. There's like so many little like moments there with each character that was really good. And I like that each character also stayed in character. Tony was still Tony, where he was, happy, sad, whatever. Like, he still had that snark about him. Captain America was still Captain America. So I thought that was really cool. You're probably gonna bring this up, so I don't want to steal your thunder too much. When Thor is there about to die as Thanos is pushing in the weapon, and you see
Stormbreaker
Mjolnir
is just immediately cutting right through too. There's like no stopping on the armor.
I was like,
I was
at first
scared.
I was like, are they gonna kill Thor?
I was scared.
And then Mjolnir like starts lifting up. Here comes his hammer. It hits Thanos. I'm like, oh, okay, he called it back. And then you see Cap catch it. I was like, yes.
That's when the crowd went, woo!
It was awesome. So I think
That's when I yeeted. Right out of the movie theater.
You're done.
It was like it was perfect. So I yeeted myself.
Oh.
Right out of the theater.
Wow.
So I think for me, it was a good culmination of 10 plus, almost 11 years of movies, 22 movies, I think it was.
22. That was 22. Yep.
For them to stick the landing this well, I thought was really good. So we'll get into other things later, but yeah, just fan service scenes like that brought up like, yes, we've wanted to see some of these things pay off. Again, back to Cap catching the hammer. Back in Ultron, when Cap is trying to lift the hammer, it starts moving a little bit, and Thor's like, what? And for him to actually get the hammer and Thor be like, I knew it.
Yep.
Just stuff like that was really cool that they did. So
Yeah, no. Oh boy. I would say Cap wielding Mjolnir, probably my favorite scene. And the fact that they even have these serious moments, but then immediately pair it with something funny and it doesn't undercut the seriousness of what just happened.
Yeah.
Like following the fight, him and Thor like side by side fighting with Stormbreaker and Mjolnir. And then in the fight after all the throwing, like there's this moment where now suddenly Cap is wielding Stormbreaker and Thor is wielding Mjolnir, and he looks at him and he's like, no, you get the little one.
You get this one.
You get the little one. It's just like, it's so funny. And I'm reminded of in Thor, when Thor was banished to our world, Midgard, right? And Mjolnir was thrown into the Bifrost. Before that, specifically what Odin said as he whispered into the hammer was, whosoever wields this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. And so we've had a long talk, and we'll probably talk about it more in this segment, about how Thor's power doesn't come from hammers. It doesn't come from axes. He's not the god of either. He's the god of thunder. So it's not Mjolnir calling lightning. It's Captain America calling lightning, because the hammer is just a focus, right? And Odin specifically said, if you are worthy and you wield the hammer, you possess Thor's power, not just the strength to wield the hammer. You possess his power, right? So in the movie, when he's calling lightning and when he literally uses a lightning bolt to strike into Thanos' body while he's on the ground, that's actually just Captain America being awesome and having Thor's power for a moment. And that just made me so happy. I really loved that. That was probably my favorite. Also, when Pepper Potts showed up in an Iron Man suit and her and Tony Stark had that back-to-back moment when they were fighting, that was so cool. It's just, Pepper had one of the best character arcs in the MCU for me, because for so many movies, her and Tony Stark were in really a toxic relationship, and they weren't supporting each other. They weren't communicating. In Iron Man 3, when he's breaking down and PTSD and having all these terrible moments, an Iron Man suit shows up, one of the Iron Legion shows up, and he's like, oh, I must have called it in my sleep, but it scared her awake. And he's in the middle of having a panic attack, and Pepper's response is, ugh, I'm gonna go sleep on the couch. Just completely disregards the fact that he is dealing with some serious mental health issues, and it just bothered me. Like, she's allowed to be scared, she's allowed to not want to deal with it, but it just didn't feel like there was any support. And then in this movie, it was just a 180. And I think that 5 years together, having a kid, it feels so nice being able to say these things without whispering. Anyway,
Spoilers.
yeah. So yeah, in the final battle, having Pepper show up was just awesome. It was really a great touch. And Cap wielding Mjolnir.
Well, and they like alluded to it sort of with Morgan
Yeah.
having the helmet that
It's
was
like, oh, it's an anniversary present for your mom.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad that I'm going last in this question because I feel like my answer to this question changes every time someone asks me.
There were so many good ones. Yeah.
But one that has kind of stayed consistent is when everyone arrives and Captain America finally says Avengers assemble. That part gave me chills.
Yeah.
And I think it not only was cool, but it kind of drove home the whole we've been building up to this for 10 years. And I think at one point he was gonna say it in Ultron and they cut him off. And a lot of people were like, oh, come on, man. But when you think about how much the definition of Avengers has evolved and how many people have been added to the Avengers, it was even cooler having that enormous collection of them for when he said it for the first time on screen.
Yeah.
Another thing that I thought was really cool was just the entrance itself. Like, I know that there's a few memes going around. I mean, there's a lot of memes in general for the movie, but when the portal started to open, I mean, hearing Falcon on the radio was one thing. Seeing the first portal open was another thing. And then seeing all of the
Once
portals.
like several of them started opening at the same time, that's when I got chills. Like,
I was like, oh my
That's when I
gosh.
was done. I was like,
yeah, yeah. Well, I was talking to you, Derek, before we started recording, and this is the first time in the MCU for me. In Infinity War, they tried, I think, with the battle in Wakanda, but it was really just a precursor to what we got in the final battle in the Act 3 of Endgame. The ability of them to act and create a scene that felt as epic as Lord of the Rings. Like, that final battle felt like I was in the theater at the midnight release, back when they actually only did midnight releases. Not I got to see this movie at 7 p.m. on Thursday. It was the best. I was home by 11. It was great. I wasn't at the theater until 4 a.m. And getting to experience that just epic level of battle that I haven't seen. It really, like, even the Hobbit movies didn't recapture it for me. Like the Siege of Gondor and Helm's Deep, like, those were epic sequences, and this felt like that. Yeah. And it's just, I think it's interesting that, I mean, we have the Build-A-Bear comment, which is hilarious, but so many of us, some of our favorite moments were in that battle, because that battle itself was so epic in every sense of the word.
My third thing, it seems like in every Avengers movie there is some sort of like slow down scene where they like show everyone. With it being such a large group, they had to do that for like several different groups of smaller groupings. But one of those was all of the women, the whole she's not alone. And I think that was a fun callback also to Infinity War, when we had Black Widow and Okoye and Scarlet Witch, who were fighting the
Proxima Midnight.
Proxima Midnight. I almost said.
I got you.
I almost
I got
said
you.
prima donna for some reason. And a lot of people are saying, you know, oh, that's just a way to drive home a point. But you know what? It's a pretty good point to make. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, I can't think of. It'd be easier for me to say it. I legitimately can't think of a scene in that movie that I could have done without. Like, I can't think of a scene that I wish they had left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people not a lot, but I've heard some people complain about some of the time travel moments where they have these like special moments with people from the past. They feel like that sort of like ran up the runtime, but I appreciated those moments. I think they added to the character arc, and I think Thor's was one of my favorites. With Frigga and spending time with her and her seeing through the craziness of it all, like the whole I was raised by witches boy. I see with more than eyes.
Just my eye, yeah. Well, and Rocket, like, get it together. Come here. Stand here. Come here. Come here. Bam.
So you mentioned there wasn't a lot we would
yeah.
improve, but do we want to talk about some things we want to tackle?
Yeah.
I thought I really liked the different character moments of vignettes. I thought some of the time travel stuff, there were a few scenes, to your point, Hannah, or to what you're bringing up, that I did feel went a little long. And the whole scene with Cap and his team, I felt that plan was overly complicated.
Right? Like, why do you have to flick Ant-Man onto Tony Stark? Why couldn't he just walk over there while they were all talking?
And all of it was to serve the plot, of course, you know.
Well,
and
they had to call back to the hand football game. So they had to
is
say,
that where that
why
came
does this
from?
matter? That's why it matters.
That's why it matters.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You literally just blew my mind. Like, of all the things that I've
Foreshadowing.
watched and read since seeing that movie, that has never come up.
Interesting. Very cool. And it served a purpose. We saw Loki disappear, and so Loki's going to be doing shenanigans and stuff like that.
He lives.
Shenanigans.
And as soon as they started with some of the time travel stuff, like, that's when I just like, this is a movie I'm just going to have fun. Like, I'm not going to try to make complete sense out of this. There are a few things that we're talking about that, okay, so if Gamora comes back to this time, does that mess up her time? There's some crazy stuff like that I was like, maybe they could have worked some of that stuff out a little bit more, but overall it was good. We're going to talk a little bit about character arcs later, but one character arc I was struggling with is Black Widow's, and you had a good point of how her character arc was good in one sense, and I'll let you talk to that. My one issue is that she sacrificed herself, which was awesome. To get the Soul Stone.
That was a tense scene.
That was tense. And I was worried for a minute because Hawkeye had gone so far as Ronin. I was like, is he gonna like push her over? Like, what is this going? And so I'm glad.
Just kicks her off of the edge.
Sorry, Nat's got to be this way.
Soul Stone.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden he just eats her off the cliff.
Yeah, I was scared about that. Oh my goodness, let's not do that.
Okay.
I'm glad we're actually fighting to be the one who's going to sacrifice. I thought that was cool.
That was really
but
good.
For her to actually, again, have the image of her just laying there, which was the same image they have Gamora, the first thing that went to my head was like, Marvel, please stop pushing girls over cliffs. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is getting crazy. To Hannah's point, though, the second thing that came into mind when that whole scene happened was like, Marvel, you don't have a lot of female superheroes. Like, what are you doing? When they did that scene with all the ladies standing there, it was the first time, oh, they do actually have a lot of, like, I didn't think about that. And so that was kind of a cool redemption, I think, to that scene.
Black Widow's movie, it's confirmed, which is awesome. We're going to
coming
get
out,
it. And now we know it's a prequel.
Yes.
So what I would love to see in that is actually the story of her defecting, right? Because they have the whole, they keep going back to Budapest, right? They keep talking about it. And Hawkeye Clint Barton was the agent sent to kill her and didn't. And instead she defected to the US. And I would love it if that's the story that they want to tell. That'd be so cool.
That'd be really cool. And I think that'd be good. I felt most of the characters had a good into their story, or like Thor, he's gonna hopefully continue in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well,
That's
you were
cool.
excited because you wanted Thor to have a downward spiral. You wanted him to wrestle. You wanted him to wrestle with his grief, and he wrestled it with a bowl of nachos and a beer
And some ice cream.
and a lot of melted ice cream.
Yes, he did.
But why don't you talk more about Thor's story and maybe some of the hitches and goods and bads that you have about that?
I think before Endgame, Thor was going through a lot. He lost almost all his family, and I just felt like every movie was just glossing over it a little bit. And he dealt with it a little bit in Infinity War. He was turned up a little bit with
2 minutes, and that's it.
Yeah, but
And what if you're wrong?
Well, if I'm wrong, then what more could I lose?
like there wasn't the aftermath that like you just lost half your people. Like, how are you dealing with it? And Endgame, half surprisingly, half jokingly, but half seriously, was like, no, he's going through a lot of stuff.
Let's just say the plot thickens.
With two
Half
C's.
your people, your mother, your father, your brother,
There's a
your
lot of
best
people.
friend.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know what they do with Lady Sif because she wasn't in the movie, but she's also alive.
I think they're just gonna wrap her or
Just
write her off.
pretend
now.
that she didn't exist.
Yeah, I
That's
think
fair.
the actress couldn't make the second movie. So
Well, what's
and I
funny
think
is
that's
like
why.
one of the Warriors 3 is played by Zachary Levi, who's
Yes.
now in the DC
Shazam.
universe. So
I know.
It all worked out.
Shazam.
Yeah. So why don't you talk more about his time with his mom?
Yeah, so we wanted to get to our faith point here, and one of the cool scenes that we thought was Thor's time with his mom, Frigga, and he was battling what he was going through, and Frigga, his mom, sees right through his disguise. She knows exactly that he's not her Thor from the same time. But anyways, when they're talking, she says a quote that I'm going to paraphrase, basically, no one succeeds, or everyone fails at being someone they should be. The mark of a true hero is if they are able to become the person that they're meant to be, or they were born to be, basically. I'm messing up the line.
Who they are.
So basically, a measure of a man and a hero is not them trying to live up to who they're supposed to be, but how they succeed at being who they are.
There you go. Thank you very much. And I thought that could be taken a couple ways. I thought about it for a while, and after I was thinking about it, I was like, I think I like this quote with a bit caution. First, the good thing I like about it is I think we feel a lot of pressure as people to be something just because someone says we should be. You know, maybe our parents think we should be something, or maybe teachers or whatever. They're like, do this, be this person, and you're like, I don't know if that really fits me. And I think we all struggle with that. A great Bible example that came to mind was from 1 Samuel chapter 17, when David is going to go up against Goliath, and King Saul's like, if you're going to tackle this beast, you know, at least wear my armor. And he puts on the armor, and it just doesn't fit him well. And I had a senior pastor once who took over from another pastor who had been serving at a church for 40 years, and he said a lot of times he felt like he was wearing someone else's suit. And it's just this idea that sometimes people can put stuff upon us, saying we should do this, we should be this person. And we're like, I don't know if this actually fits me. And so I like that advice, just as long as we're keeping in mind that sometimes in this world, being what we feel we were created to be, or wherever, can be an excuse to not follow responsibility, or not to make wise choices, or to do whatever we want. And I think that's not a good thing. I think God created us. God knows the person that he designed us to be. And sometimes even ourselves, we have the wrong image of who we want to be. And so I think if we're following God, then he will show us, no, this is what I planned for you. And I think we should go to him first. But what do you guys think about the idea of this wrestle that we have between being what other people think we should be, and then maybe being what God designed us to be? What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think for me, it's like, we're all trying to find like, what is my calling here? Like what's my calling? And people tend to look at their skills and their traits, and they say, this is what I'm good at. So this must be what I'm called to do. Now that sounds good, unless you're really good at stealing stuff, and don't
do that.
Hey, Ant-Man figured it out.
I was going to say, it worked out for Ant-Man.
It worked out for Ant-Man. But I think there's like this thing where it's like, there's this verse where Jesus tells Paul, he says, when like you're weak, then that's when I'm strong. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, we think that it's our strengths that kind of define who we are. But what I believe in, as I've been on this walk for so like many years and whatnot, it's actually dying to who we think we are, and actually saying, Lord, transform me into who I'm supposed to be. And there's a difference there. You know, I was a very shy person growing up for the most part, very close-knit friends like that. You know, now where my life is now I greet like people on the street, and I say prayers, and I do stuff like that. That's not what my ever plan was. That's not my quote-unquote skill, but that's how the Lord has transformed me. And if I stuck with this mind like that I'll never change it, and this is who I am, then I would not be where I am today, which I believe is more close to the Lord than I've ever been before.
Yeah,
so I think it's like, Christ like says that he's the firstborn among many. So we're supposed to reflect who he is. And that's the call, is that we aren't putting on a mask and say, look at me, I'm just like Jesus. No, it's a transforming of our heart is like his heart. And then from that, then our actions transform. Because once we have his same heart, then the things that hurt him will hurt us. And the things that give him joy will give us joy. And if you're not at that place, then you may want to ask, like, Lord, let me feel what you feel, and love what you love, and see what you see. And Lord, I pray that I see with your eyes to see who like I am in your eyes, which it says that we're called to be. It says that we are saints in him and things like that. There's a lot of he's called us some pretty awesome things in the Word of God that we don't always live up to, but that's still what he says we are. So that's
that's a great point. And like to both of your points, going back to the example of David, he did some pretty terrible things. He was a cheater. He was a murderer. And yet, to your point, what does the Bible say he was above all? A man after God's own heart.
the heart.
And so it's not him accepting his flaws. It's not him saying, it's okay that I've made mistakes. It's that in spite of those character problems, he was a man after God's own heart. And so it's exactly what you're saying, Derek, that we can't use this idea as an argument to say, you know what, it's really okay that, you know, I like cheating on my wife because I'm a really good preacher. And you know how many people I've saved? Like a lot. You know, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And we have to be able to overcome, with God's help, those character flaws to achieve the purpose that he has for us. You know, I think of like Thor versus Aragorn, right? Both of them didn't want to be king. Aragorn eventually decided, you know what, this is who I am, this is who I was created to be. And Aragorn through and through is a leader. He is a fantastic leader. We see that through all of the Lord of the Rings movies. And Thor, it makes sense to me for him to hand the reins over to Valkyrie and be the protector instead, because that is the Thor that we have seen in the MCU. And so Thor realized that who he is supposed to be isn't who he is, and that's okay. And it's not an excuse to be chubby and fat and unhappy, but he's coming to grips with who he is actually. And that, like, I think some of the despair and the symptoms we were seeing of that are caused by this focus on trying to be someone he isn't, just because other people have pressured him into it. Because he happened to be born to Odin, suddenly he's going to be king. How many times have we been born to parents and we have no business doing the job that they've done their entire life, right? And so for him, being who he is a good decision. But if Thor has character flaws, then he can't just embrace all of those as well. So there's a balance. What about you, Hannah? Do you have anything you want to toss in?
I think you can also look at it from the perspective of thinking that you're not enough. Whereas with Thor, it was a lot of like trying to fill these shoes because everyone thought he was supposed to be this amazing king, when really like he was best suited to do this thing that probably wasn't expected of him because of his higher standing. A lot of people are probably dealing with the idea of being called and being designed for something more than what people expect from them. A lot was expected from Thor, but a lot of people are kind of pushed to the side. And you mentioned David at a different point in his life, when they were looking at who would be the next king with the prophecy, his dad, Jesse, didn't even call him in to be an option when, I believe it was Samuel, right? Yeah. Who was asking to see all of Jesse's sons, because even his own dad didn't consider him even an option to be.
He didn't even say his name. He's like, well, there's one more out in the field.
Yeah.
I think. He's kind of short.
Like bears and
things.
I don't know if you want that guy.
I think I have another kid somewhere.
He's like, stop, you know.
That's a good point.
That's a great point. Yeah. And I think to your point, Hannah, again, I think we have the wrong idea of who we should be in our own heads. So I think that's why it's important to bring it to God. And God, what did you design me to do? And I think when we follow that, that's when we really come alive and really start doing the things that we should do. Yeah. Like being a king's a role, being a protector is a little bit different. And I think Thor is wrestling between those two. And I think we wrestle between titles and roles and all that stuff. And I love your point. Sometimes we shortchange ourselves as well. Yeah. And God thinks more of us than we think of ourselves. Yeah. And so,
well, there's who we're supposed to be, right? And that's what the world says. And then there's who we're supposed to be, which is what God says about us. And so it can be a little confusing because it's the same wording, right? But the world says we're supposed to be one way and God says we're supposed to be another way. And you can pick which one you want to listen to, but life's going to be a little bit easier you know, if you pick what the world, I'm just kidding. If you pick what God says,
What?
what
depends on the
God
world.
says we're
Listen to
supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, it's any closing thoughts? I don't want to cut anyone off. If you guys have anything else you
I love
dying
you
to say.
3000.
Oh, she went there. She went there.
That's how I was going to sign off. I'll still do it, but it'll be less emotionally impactful. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you guys for coming. Great chat as always. Thank you for coming and watching. It's wonderful having you here. I hope you enjoyed this. We do love you 3000. I also want a cheeseburger.
Oh,
My
I
dad
get you all the
was
cheeseburgers you want.
Just turn off the camera before I cry. Farewell.
Bye-bye.